My name is Joseph Schuldenrein, and I am the president of Geoarchaeology Research Associates. Together with Stan Green, we put together a major component of the work associated with the Portalis project. Our specific task was to look at the connection between the ancient landscapes and human occupation of southeastern Ireland, specifically in the area of the Fournot Beach. Our project actually looked at two major components. One was looking at the pure archaeology associated with that landscape, and we're talking specifically about the areas between the Craden Head and the Knockavilish Head, which is encompassed by the Fournot Beach. So you're looking at two elevated landscape components, which are the uplands and what we would call a glacial till plain, and the beach itself. We demonstrated in the course of our work that the glaciers actually did extend that far, and regional evidence was suggesting that. And in our most recent work, we have demonstrated that what happened in the Fournot Beach area is really consistent with what the most recent findings, and I'm talking about 2 decades ago, a little more recently, in fact, is consistent. So we demonstrated that there were glacial advances. They dated to about 20,000 years ago. We got a radiocarbon date in our fieldwork that demonstrated that this was in fact the case. So that if we had a Mesolithic occupation on top of those elevated landscapes, they would be as old as Mesolithic, but certainly not older. And so that's one of the major findings that we demonstrated. What our project showed us is that we have a sea level rise curve for that part of the project area, the Fournot Beach, and probably elsewhere, that is relatively indexed by the radiocarbon dates that we procured from our coring project. The coring project was really the major component of the work that we did. And what we found is that, with one glaring exception, the southeastern portion that we sampled was consistent. And the glaring exception is that the onset of sea level rise seemed to vary a little bit, actually significantly, from what the models predicted. And this is exactly the type of uncertainty that was predicted, and we are in that sequence. We identified buried forest layers that were known to be in the area by previous researchers, but we are now at the point where we can identify the changing forest landscape for the past 4,000 or 5,000 years with a certain measure of with a measure of certainty. And further, that we are also going to figure out what the landscape looked like well into the Mesolithic time range, if not necessarily associating that with a specific occupation. So these are the types of pioneering work that we were able to undertake in a pretty short period of time. And I think it's going to feed in very, very nicely with the landscape reconstruction. I will say that once our research is done, we will probably have one of the most comprehensive ancient landscapes and reconstructions for the past 8,000 years anywhere in the country. And I think it's going to be representative of a pretty small area, but it's going to fit in nicely with some models that have been advanced. We've also utilized a climate model that our group has been working on for about 15 years on a worldwide level. The Mesolithic period is uniquely consistent in that part of Ireland to the degree that we can probably generate a reason why the Mesolithic people settled where they were, because there was minimal seasonal variability in that part of Ireland over the course of the 4,000 years of the Mesolithic. After that, we have undulating season and changing seasonal rainfall patterns, both previous and subsequent to the Mesolithic. So it's hinting to us that, if nothing else, the Mesolithic was a period of extreme landscape stability across that part of Ireland, and I'm not sure anybody else has come up with that. So those are the types of major conclusions that we're starting to, not conclusions, but let's call them hypotheses right now, because we do have major data coming in. But those are the types of hypotheses that we're working on for our area, and how far they can expand elsewhere across the southeastern part of the country and to greater landscapes that to the north, west, and so forth. We don't know, but we will certainly have a pretty definite model of landscape synthesis by the time we're finished with this, and that should be relatively in short order. So that's exactly where we stand at this particular point.